You might think that IYN is the best strategy for consistent fast wins, and to be fair, it was for a while, but now we've invented a new strategy that optimizes the speed of force bedwars games to its maximum potential that we use to get the daily force record of 430 wins. Most strategy has two players rushing each side, with a bridger and a second rusher. The first rusher gets 24 iron, tosses all of the gold back, and buys a stack and a half of blocks. It's preference whether or not you want to stay for 34 iron and buy a stone sword on top of that, but it's highly recommended if you can speed bridge fast. And the second rusher gets tier 2 tools, 32 blocks, and an iron sword. The second rusher that walks out first puts on a defense of one layer wool as fast as possible. To explain why our strategy is faster than IYN, I'm going to have to point out the flaws with IYN that our strategy fixes. Butterfly defense takes 72 iron, which is a lot to waste, and takes lots of time to place. It's important that the second rusher catches up to the first rusher, because the first rusher has to stall until the second rusher reaches the base, and anything can happen during that time. TNT rushing makes wiping difficult because the explosion makes the base open, making it easier for opponents to kill you. Wooden and stone swords are inefficient for wiping, and if you fail TNT rushing, your second rush is going to be a lot more difficult. Of course, IYN is a good strategy, and I'm not saying that it isn't, but I feel like it was made as a very cookie cutter method of playing designed for players that grind hours of Bed Wars a day, just because it's a very repetitive and mechanical way of playing that makes playing Bed Wars for hours less tiring due to it requiring less effort. Our strategy revolves around effectivity. If your opponents make a mistake, it's very easy to punish them for it because of the Iron Sword's insane damage output capability. You can kill a player in leather armor in literally 3 hits, which is why an Iron Sword is almost essential to bring along. It's just such an overpowered item, especially when you have one in the first 30 seconds of the game. It obviously goes without saying that watching out for mid rushes, not letting anyone pass, and good maps are all crucial, but I think that's just common sense. But it's also important to keep in mind that this strategy is objectively more difficult than IYN because tool rushing is just simply harder to pull off. So it goes to say that if this strategy doesn't work for you, sticking to IYN might be your best shot. But you can still make cup through good coordination and teamwork. Working together with your teammate can help separate a 2v4 into smaller fights so that you can pick people off, leveling the fight, making it a lot easier to wipe. Something we're actually quite proud of is that we don't dodge, and there's a good reason for it. It actually increases our pace by around 2 wins per hour, which is a massive deal when going from 16 wins per hour to 18 wins per hour. And I think this is because when dodging, you can easily waste between 10 seconds to 10 minutes per game while finding what you might call a good queue. But honestly, you don't want to be wasting any time on time that isn't gameplay. You might say, oh, but doesn't fighting better players mean that my games will take longer? Yeah, it should in theory, but it really doesn't because people that you might be at a risk of losing to always dodges. So the only challenge you'll have to deal with are occasional parties and snipers, which honestly aren't too big of a deal as long as you know who to watch out for. But if you are dodging, make sure to just leave the lobby straight away because it's not worth wasting your time and anyone else in that queue just to not even play the game against the people that you originally queued. If you join a queue and don't like it, just do everyone a favor, including yourself, and dodge the queue instead of waiting it out until the very last second. The strategy is fairly flexible, so if you don't feel like tool rushing, you can let the other side tool rush while you buy a TNT and Endstone. You can even buy a pop-up tower as a bridger or a KB stick and leave early as a second rusher. Now, to answer what everybody cares about, is it viable for win streaking? Now, IYN is a very widespread strategy that's known for its consistency, which makes it a very viable strategy for win streaking. Now, is our strategy as ideal for win streaking? And to be honest, probably not, because we do only put on a wool defense after all. But I feel like when used right and played cautiously, it's just as viable as IYN for consistent wins. And not only that, fast wins, it's a lot easier to get a high number of wins during a shorter period of time because everyone gets tired eventually. And I don't know if it's just for me, but what I've learned is that the time spent running around in queues or running around the map are just as mentally fatiguing compared to going crazy and wiping teams back to back. Simply put, considering that you don't lose, you'll be rewarded with a higher win streak with the same amount of time invested using our strategy. But it might be harder to not lose in the first place. Key advice that comes in very handy for wiping that I can give you coming from a bridger myself is to set your teammate up for success. Don't care too much about sharing finals or saving any, just let your teammate go ham. You're not the one with the iron sword, they are, so don't be selfish and don't be afraid to bait yourself to set your teammate up for kills. The tool rusher gets more finals at the end of the day, but it's important to be generous as a bridger in the pursuit of faster games because fours is a team game after all. So yeah, feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions or suggestions.